What's up, guys? This is Legend Killer 5, and in this video I'm going to tell you which guys I like on the depth chart on offense. Okay, now here obviously we're going to start with quarterback. I typically like my quarterbacks to have high throwing power or low throwing power. It doesn't really matter. As long as they have 80 throwing power with at least 72 accuracy or higher everywhere. I've even played with quarterbacks who had like 72 throw power or 75 throwing power, because I was just able to adapt. I would go through teams and just see if I was able to, you know, do that. Use players that didn't have, really good attributes. Uh, I would suggest coming up with a scheme that you want to use and just look for guys that suit your playing style and your scheme. So, whether it's a mobile QB who can throw on the run and pick up yards, whether you can pick up yards with them. Um, so, if you see the defense blitzing, you could either beat them by throwing it, beat the blitz by throwing it, or you could, you know, roll out um, and run with the QB if they're all gonna, if they're gonna play man coverage. That's why when you see quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers or mobile quarterbacks, the analysts always say, Aaron Rodgers was able to pick up a lot of yards because they were in man coverage, which typically has the corners, their backs turned. So they're not looking at the QB anymore because only in zone coverage do they really look at the quarterback because they're anticipating what kind of throw. They're waiting to see what kind of throw you're going to make um, and see where the ball's going to go. So you can also have a quarterback that can just make all the throws too. Um, there are quarterbacks that you think aren't fast enough, mobile enough, but really, as long as they have like 65 speed and, okay agility and acceleration, you could pick up first downs easily, even in the read option, especially in the read option. Next would be the running backs. Obviously, choose speed or power. A lot of teams tend to have a mixed bag of guys back there. They have one that's speedy, one that has more power, and one that's a versatile guy who can also be a receiver. Remember, awareness doesn't matter all that much, but make sure your running backs have good carrying, or you'll be asking why you fumble so much. Yeah, guys. Also, don't forget to cover up. Don't try and dance in the open field. If you get positive yards, a good 4 to 5 yards, don't try to make a guy miss. I mean, you can make one guy miss, but don't make more than two guys miss. Don't try to make more than two guys miss. You'll be fine. On to our next position, fullbacks. Fullbacks, of course, are used to run and pass block, but it doesn't mean you can't once in a while audible to a quick fullback dive from an I form play or any play that has a fullback in the backfield under center, like a goal line play as well. If you see that the defense is playing soft, it's almost like reading the line when you're a quarterback. Check check that line, check that front seven, see where the hole is, and just run it there or switch it the other way to where the hole is. Um, it's quick and it's nasty. Another thing is to check their speed, carrying, stiff arm, and trucking because you'll be running it. And as for their speed, well, you could have, I would suggest 75 or higher with all those good ratings that I mentioned. Having those ratings, you know, in a good area. Um, you can also use them in the passing game as receivers. You can also use fullbacks as receivers. Some teams don't have, good depth for pass catching tight ends. So, you know, you might be able to upgrade one. I like one anyway since I like a good blocking tight end as well. So I don't throw much to my tight ends. Um, but if you have a team that's got like two great pass catching tight ends, you just can't help yourself. So, you know, you could do whatever you like. You get the idea. Now on to those tight ends. I like tight ends that have good blocking as well. I don't use tight ends much unless I have a good team with two great passing, two great pass catching tight ends, like I mentioned earlier. Um, but one thing I like to do is if I see a team with not enough depth at wide receiver, I usually put an athletic pass catching tight end as my number four wide receiver, or I uh, put a running back as my number four wide receiver as well. The reason for this is not to only help out my wide receiver depth, but an athletic pass catching tight end would now be going against a number four corner. I don't know about you, but I like that. It's an advantage because most teams' number four corners are typically bad with play recognition, which means they are bad at reading which routes are being run. Also, meaning that as long as it's not a straight streak route and it's a breaking route, like a slant, a drag, um, maybe not a drag, but a slant, uh, an out route, typically a deeper out route, not a short, deep out route. Um, the tight end will have a lot of immediate separation. Of course, unless your opponent edited their depth chart to having a good safety in there, or their number two corner, which I doubt. And I will get into this later in the next video of where I tell you which guys I have in my depth chart on defense. Now back to those running backs playing wide receiver, playing in number four wide receiver, actually playing in the slot. Um, as I said, some teams don't have that good number three slot wide receiver. So what I do is I add them in, and once again, it's great. Not just to plug another wide receiver, but if you have a backup with pass catching ratings, a backup running back with pass catching ratings of even in the 70s and good running back ratings, like carrying, stiff arming, uh, trucking, spins, jukes, all that stuff. Um, that goes a long way to having a dominant wide receiver and giving the defense a nightmare and problems. So the carrying rating not only is for you know um, not fumbling, holding onto the ball, but it also goes with your catching. It goes with how good your hands are. It goes with how good your hands are and how likely you are to hold on to the ball. After you catch it, as soon as you catch it. If there's anybody around, that would still have to do with your catching traffic, but you shouldn't have any problems. Shouldn't have that many problems. So guess what? Now you have a wide receiver that can make guys miss in the open field because they have ratings as a running back because they are a running back. And if you have trucking or stiff arm too, damn, that's scary. Now on to those big O linemen that don't get enough love. Uh, this depends on what kind of offense you like to run. But one thing you obviously need to know is if you don't, is that just like other players on the field, they get tired and need subbing too. This is very crucial. Um, so make sure you add capable backups to the starters because the default depth chart has it left blank and with no backups shown on the depth chart. So they will fill it in during the game when your guys need to be subbed. So in this situation, they might give you a backup left tackle that would be really bad. For example, they might give you a left tackle that has a rating of 52, an overall rating of 52, which would have really bad ratings across the board. Um, so what I do is I would, look at my depth chart, see which guys are my backups, and see if there are guards or if there's a right tackle that could fill in that backup left tackle position, and also if can backup guards can be good backup centers, and vice versa. So that's pretty much what I have there. Another tip I came up with is for any position other than quarterback, kicker, punter, and long snapper, is if you don't have enough depth at any position, check to see if you have players that have a very high stamina rating in the mid to high 90s range. If they do, you can put the lower rated player to back them up and put the higher rated backup behind the starter that has a low stamina rating. That way you can have good guys in longer. I use this mainly for the front seven, but you could use that logic with any position except those I mentioned above. But of course, don't forget to check their injury ratings to see if they're injury prone. That's about it, guys. Um, Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll be making the next video about defense, the depth chart for defense, and a little more goodies as well. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. This was Legend Killer 5. I'm out.